Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this ORCID workshop for researchers. My name is Paolo Guhilde. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the strategist for the ORCID US community. My colleague Sheila Rabin, Senior Strategist for Research Infrastructures Program, and Kayla Ramhit, ORCID US Program Assistant, are also joining us here today. The three of us manage the ORCID US community at Lyrasis. If you are not familiar, Lyrasis provides consortial services for libraries, archives, and museums, and related knowledge communities. So, whether you're familiar with ORCID or have never heard of it, ORCID is an increasingly important factor of your digital identity and impact as a researcher, and it's designed to help you save time, which I will talk more about in a minute. To help you get the most value from ORCID today, we are going to cover an overview of ORCID, the ORCID and ORCID record, and how ORCID can benefit you. And then we'll make sure you know how to get your own ORCID ID if you don't already have one. And we'll cover a few tips for how to save time in populating your ORCID record with your information. So, for those who may be unfamiliar, or as a refresher for those who already know, what is ORCID? ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor Identifier. The goal of ORCID is to uniquely identify you so that you can get credit and attribution for your work and streamline your digital identity so you can save time on administrative tasks while keeping track of all of your affiliations and contributions in one central place. ORCID is a nonprofit community-driven organization that serves the unique global research community. ORCID provides researchers with what we call an ORCID ID, a 16-digit number that is unique to you, so you can distinguish yourself from other researchers despite the complexities that come with identifying ourselves by name. Anyone can get their own ORCID ID for free, and it looks something like this. This ORCID ID belongs to our volunteer researcher, Sophia. You'll notice that the ORCID ID looks like a link, and that is because it is. Your ORCID ID links to what we call an ORCID record. So if you click on the ORCID ID link, we are taken to Sophia's ORCID record, which is populated with information about her, similar to what we might see on a CV or resume, like her employment information. We can also see that she has different name formations in the also known as section, as well as her country and some keywords describing her research areas. Scrolling down, we can see that Sophia also has her education and qualifications listed. Professional activities such as membership, service, distinction, and invited positions. We can also find information about funding she has received, research equipment that she has used, and works such as publications she has written. Last but not least, we can also see her peer review activity here. Now, let's talk about the benefits of ORCID. ORCID distinguishes you from others. Your ORCID ID persists over time, even if your name changes or if anything else in your life changes. Your ORCID record can bolster your digital identity, and ultimately, your ORCID record can save you time when you have to fill out forms that ask for information about you and your research activities. Additionally, many publishers and funders are starting to require ORCID IDs from authors and investigators. So if you have not already run into this, it's likely that you will in the future. So at the most basic level, ORCID ID distinguishes you and ensures your research outputs and activities are correctly attributed to you, especially when you're publishing and working with other people. For example, in this PubMed abstract, there are not only multiple authors, but multiple authors with the same last name and the same first initial. So it's really impossible to distinguish who is who these researchers are, their credentials, institutional affiliations, or other research that they may have contributed to. So if you look at the screen, these are just names on the page with no additional context or identifying information. If we're looking for an author named Sofia Garcia, there could be multiple people who identify with that name. But again, with ORCID, because Sophia's ORCID ID is unique, we can better distinguish her and her works and activities from other individuals. So ORCID helps to streamline your online digital identity in the research landscape. The ORCID ID is helpful because if there are other people who share your name, if your name has changed, or if you've used different variations of your name in the past, your ORCID ID stays the same and can tie you to your affiliations and activities throughout your career through your ORCID record. So if you look at this with Sofia Maria Hernandez Garcia, the different names that she's used throughout her academic career ties in to basically to her ORCID ID. An ORCID record. When research contributions are findable, linked to individuals involved, and centrally located in an ORCID record, data and deliverables can be more easily shared and reused. Researchers can also find each other and make connections, and researchers get recognition for their work. Now, we are going to keep talking about the benefits, but looking specifically at how ORCID can benefit you in the research landscape. So regardless of your how popular your name is, or whether your name has changed. When you think about the very basic aspects of activities that are researchers involved in, you get a job somewhere at a university or agency or other type of institution, then you get funding to work on specific research, and then you do your research and publish the results. Then you have to report on your activities to your employer, and you have to report back to the organization that provided your funding. So if you look at this diagram, this is very simplistic, and we know that things can get increasingly complex as you contribute to work with more and more organizations over time. ORCID helps to streamline this process both for you as a researcher and also the organizations that you work with. So when it comes to getting funding, many funders, especially in the health sciences, not only ask for or require that investigators provide their ORCID ID so the funder can distinguish you, but they also use your ORCID to help you save time, depending on what funder you are working with and what system they're using. So these are just a few of the funders that are using ORCID in their workflows. So for example, American Heart Association, um, Melanoma Research Alliance, Wellcome Trust. Those are just some of the funders that are using ORCID. Some funding systems also will allow you to sign in using your ORCID, so you don't have to remember yet another system password, and we know how that can be complicated sometimes. So this is an example from a system called Proposal Central, which many funders are using. Some funding systems will also allow you to import info from your ORCID record directly into funding applications and also into progress reports so that you don't have to spend time filling out forms and retyping everything over and over again. The Proposal Central platform that I mentioned earlier allows for this. And the example on this slide is from SciNCV, which can be used to create a biosketch for NIH or NSF funding applications. So when you are creating a new biosketch, you can select ORCID as an external source, and the system will automatically pull in all of your information from your ORCID record, such as your bio, employment history, and educational background. Then for work citations, you can select ORCID and then select which citations you want to import into ScienceCV from your ORCID record. And finally, make sure to click Save Citations, and this should add your selected citations to your biosketch. Now, we are hearing a lot of developments lately with Science CV and just the federal kind of policies. So, as for developments related to Science CV, we can talk a little bit more about that shortly. So, and some funders will actually add your funding award to your ORCID record for you. So you don't even have to update that yourself. So this is an example of funding that a researcher received from the Children's Tumor Foundation. And you can see the source of this entry is Children's Tumor Foundation, which means that the foundation itself added this funding information to Raymond's ORCID record on his behalf. So he did not have to enter it himself. Now, let's talk a little bit about the developments related to federal funding agencies and persistent identifiers like ORCID. In the last few years, we've been hearing about this, and we're probably looking at, fairly soon, coming soon, really, is all federal agencies that provide grant funding will be starting to either require or encourage the use of digital persistent identifier, which we really know more as persistent identifier for investigators in this case. So we are expecting to see even more usage of ORCID because ORCID is a persistent identifier for investigators. So ORCID will be coming up in a few years. So we're quite excited about that. Also, some of you are familiar with the developments in the NSF with NSF and Science CV. Um, in last October 23rd, 2023, the new proposals for NSF are going to be using biosketches using the Science CV platform. So basically what you're doing here is looking at uploading your data, which you can do through ORCID from ORCID to Bio to Science CV, and you'll be able to create your biosketch doing that. And that makes it easier for you because the information is already in ORCID, and you can grab that information to Science CV. And really, what it is that NSF is requiring the use of Science CV when you are building your biosketches. So now let's move a little bit to the publisher side. Now, the publishers really is the same basic thing as we just kind of what we were looking at for the funders. So many of you already know that publishers often require or ask for your ORCID ID when you submit a manuscript. And publishers have been doing this even longer than funders. So these are just a few of the publishers that are using ORCID. So for example, American Chemical Society, BMJ Journals, IEEE, Science Open, Springer Nature, Wiley. So those are just some of the publishers. The benefits here are similar to the funding workflows. Publishing systems often allow for you to sign in using ORCID, so you don't have to remember a different password for each publisher that you are working with. Sometimes publishers pre-fill forms with information from your ORCID record to help you save time with any info that you might need to submit to a publisher. So that makes it even easier for you. And publishers will often automatically add your publication information to your ORCID record for you. Again, saving you time when you're doing or adding information to your ORCID record. Research institutions, organizations, especially universities, are also increasingly using ORCID in their workflows. And these are just a few examples from the US, like Cornell University, MIT, Stanford University, University of Iowa, and University of Texas. But there are more organizations, more institutions that are using ORCID. Similarly to funders and publishers, institutional systems can allow you to connect your ORCID ID with institution. The example that you're seeing here is from Stanford University, where researchers can connect their ORCID ID with their Stanford ID in order to allow information to flow between their ORCID record and Stanford systems. Institutional systems like research information management systems or reporting systems are often set up to allow you to import information from your ORCID record so you don't have to re-enter information over and over again. So just make sure that your ORCID record is up to date. Then you can transfer your information to your university by clicking a button, as you can see from this example, Faculty 180, where you can import your ORCID information at Boston College. And also, institutions can add information to your ORCID record for you, like your employment affiliation and other relevant information, where the source of the information will be the name of the institution rather than your own name. So having, say, the source at your university, um, so the name of the university appears as the source. So this really adds a degree of authority and trustworthiness to the information in your ORCID record. A few other areas where trusted organizations can add information to your ORCID record for you include peer review activities. So if you have served as a peer reviewer and provided your ORCID ID during that peer review work, it is possible to have your peer review activity automatically added to your ORCID record for you. As you can see in this example, where Pablans has added information, peer review activity to this person's ORCID record. One thing that we want to keep in mind, though, that only trusted organizations are able to do this. So you're not able to do it as, say, manually. If you're entering information for yourself, you won't be able to do that manually. However, organizations will have to do it to send that peer review activity. So basically, ORCID is used by funders, publishers, and research institutions across the globe to uniquely identify the researchers they work with and to make any application and reporting requirements easier for researchers by allowing data to be transferred between ORCID records and local organizational systems. In this graphic, you can see the researcher at the center with their ORCID ID and their ORCID record, and then the organizations that the researchers works with are able to connect with the researchers through their ORCID ID to get information about the researcher, but also add relevant information to the researcher's ORCID record for them. Again, saving time. The idea is that you or the organizations that you are affiliated with can populate your information in your ORCID record once, and then you can reuse the information from your ORCID record when you have to provide that information to other organizations. So you're basically reusing what's available in your ORCID record when you're, say, applying for funding or you're submitting publications through a publication system and all of those kind of information. Not every organization or system uses ORCID in this way yet. So the best approach is to keep an eye out for the green ORCID button, the ORCID ID icon that you see here when you are working with these types of organizations. And if you do see it, use it so that you can save time by signing into a system using ORCID, importing info from your ORCID record to fill forms, report activities, and sending information from other systems to your ORCID record for future use. So the idea is enter once and reuse often. So now that you know what ORCID is and how it can benefit you, now it's time to get your own ORCID ID, or if you don't already have one. So if you don't have an ORCID ID yet, or if you don't remember whether or not you have an ORCID ID, go to orcid.org/register. On the first screen, you will input your first name. You will input your first name and last name and your email address. It is recommended to add more than one email address so that if you lose access to one email, for example, you can still access your ORCID record. This is important, say, for example, if you're using your organizations or institutions email address, it's always a good idea to have another email to add there. So it could be your personal email. So if, let's say, for example, you leave the university and go to another one, it's much easier to have a different email that you can use to access your ORCID record. So next, you will set your password for your ORCID account, as well as your notification settings. And finally, you will set your default visibility settings and accept ORCID's terms of use. For the visibility settings, this has to do with who can see the information on your ORCID record. The options are everyone, which means by default, the information in your ORCID record will be publicly visible online. Trusted organizations is the other option, which means that only organizations that you authorize will be able to see information on your ORCID record. And finally, you have an option to pick only me, which means the information will be completely private and only you can see it. We will talk more about these visibility settings in a minute, but I will say that in order to get the most value from your ORCID record, the public setting is recommended, or the trusted parties setting. You can always change the visibility for specific entries in your ORCID record if there are certain items that you want to be private or not publicly visible. And we will cover that next. But once you have registered for your ORCID ID, you will receive a confirmation email from ORCID that you will need to click on to confirm your account and start to add information. Now, if you try to register for an ORCID ID, but you already have one, ORCID would alert you if there's already an ORCID ID associated with your email address or addresses. The idea is that you will only have one ORCID ID to identify you throughout your career. Sometimes people have created an ORCID ID but then forget about it. So this is designed to prevent you from accidentally registering for multiple ORCID IDs. Once you have registered for your ORCID ID, or if you already have an ORCID ID, you can log into your ORCID record at orcid.org/login. Note that you can also choose to use your Gmail or Facebook credentials to log into ORCID. If you are affiliated with a university, you might be also able to use your university login credentials to log into ORCID by clicking the Access Through Your Institution button. Registering for your ORCID ID is the first step, but remember, to really benefit and save time with ORCID, you need to make sure you have information populated in your ORCID record. Adding information to your ORCID record is pretty straightforward. Remember that the more information you have in your ORCID record, the more it will serve to distinguish you, and you can save more time when interacting with ORCID-enabled reporting systems. The ORCID record provides space for you to include biographical information about yourself, including the also known as section where you can list any other names that you have used. Employment and education information, there's also sections for memberships and service, invited positions and distinctions, funding you have received, and works that you have produced. One thing to note before we get started is that you have full control over the data in your ORCID record, your privacy, and the visibility of your data. So when you're logged in into your ORCID record, you can control the visibility settings for each piece in your ORCID record by clicking the Edit button or the Edit pencil icon, or by clicking on the drop-down menu as shown here. So so basically you can click on that um, button that says everyone, and then you can choose the visibility settings. All right, so the visibility settings, so we have three different settings. The first, as I mentioned earlier, is everyone. So this really means that the data will be public and anyone on the internet can see this information. Only me, which can only be seen by you. This is completely private. And finally, you can choose the trusted parties option. And this means that only individuals that you designate or organizations that you connect your ORCID ID with will be able to see this information. So With these visibility settings in mind, let's get started with populating information in your ORCID record. That said, information can be added to your ORCID record in few different ways. You can add information to your ORCID record yourself, or you can designate a trusted individual to add information to your ORCID record for you. So this is helpful if you have, say, you have an assistant, for example, or another person that you want to um, put in charge to update your ORCID record. You can do that. For the works and funding sections of ORCID, you can use the built-in search and link wizard to claim items to your ORCID record, or you can connect your ORCID ID with organizations that you work with so that those organizations can add information to your ORCID record for you automatically. Again, not all organizations are set up to do this yet, so you will just need to ask and look for the ORCID ID icon on any systems that you may be using. So let's take a look, a little bit of a deep dive into the different options that you can do, or the different ways you can add information to your ORCID record. So for the employment section, you can click on Add Employment and then type in your information in the box that appears. You will want to start typing the name of your organization and select your organization from the drop down that appears, which will pre-populate some of the information. So the example here is for University of Illinois, and then you can pick the organizations that you are affiliated with. So with this, for example, if I work at University of Illinois system, I would pick that, and then the detail, and then I would add that to basically to my employment section of my ORCID record. So the more employment history you can include, the better. So going back to your employment or career, for example, so you can add previous employment and all of those informations. But we always recommend to use the drop-down menu that's available. You will also see the same basic process to add your education information. So go to the education section and click Add Education. Start typing the name of your organization and select from the drop-down that appears. Then fill in your education details and click Add to List. If you are currently in school, for example, your university might be able to add your education information to your ORCID record for you, so you might want to check with your school to see if this is an option. Additional areas in the ORCID record that you can manually enter information include the affiliation or professional activities section, and biographical information. So again, other kind of affiliation type of information you can add includes qualifications, invited positions, distinctions, memberships, and service. And the biographical information, really your biography, they're also known as section, which is really your other names, country, keywords. You can also add websites and social links as well. Now, if you don't have time or if you have an assistant to help you, you can designate a trusted individual to add info and update information on your ORCID record for you. So when you are logged into your ORCID record, you can click on your name in the top right corner of the screen and click on Trusted Parties in the drop-down that appears on On Trusted Parties page, if you scroll down a bit, you will see a trusted individual section right here where you can search for and designate someone as a trusted individual on your ORCID account. So you can only make someone a trusted individual if they also have an ORCID account. So if you have an assistant, for example, encourage them to have an ORCID account or an ORCID ID so that way you can add them as a trusted individual in your ORCID record. But remember, ORCID is free, so always encourage everyone to register and use ORCID. And anyone, including researchers, contributors, basically if you have an assistant that you want to use, that you want to add information to your ORCID record, so make sure that they have an ORCID ID. So really the thought here is that you don't necessarily have to be a researcher to have an ORCID ID. And that's the field where you can search for the person's name. Now, if you want to take some time before we dive into details in adding your publications to your ORCID record, earlier we discussed how publishers are asking about your ORCID ID when you are submitting your manuscript or in the process of publication. So depending on the publishers, for example, the ORCID ID can be added to the DOI or there's digital object identifier metadata of your publication. This DOI metadata is then pushed to Crossref. Crossref is one of the two DOI registries in the US. By having your ORCID ID in DOI metadata, Crossref can automatically add works or publications to your ORCID record as long as you have given them permission to do so. How can you provide permission to Crossref? Some of you might have noticed that you have two or more Crossref entries in your work section with slightly different source name. So these are two ways that Crossref pushes works data to your ORCID record. Example one, which has Crossref as the source, is an auto-update process in which Crossref automatically pushes the works data to your ORCID record. To enable this functionality, your publisher will have to provide the works metadata to Crossref, and Crossref will then notify you via the ORCID inbox to add this work to your ORCID record. We always recommend to use ORCID as much as possible throughout the research ecosystem, and you can also ask that encourage your publishers to add your ORCID ID in the metadata. So your works can be findable and linked to systems easily. So that's the idea of having all of those identifiers in your metadata. Now, the example two here, what you'll see is with Crossref metadata search. So this one is a way to claim your works through a search and link wizard in your ORCID record. So the difference really is that the first one is through your publisher. The second one, the second example is within ORCID using the search and link wizard, and you claim the works that you have published. Now, let's go through the process of adding works via search and link wizard, which is the example two here. The works section of your ORCID record is down towards the bottom. So if you scroll down your ORCID record, you should see the works section. And if you click on the button that says to add works, so click on that, you'll see a drop down with many options for different ways to add works to your ORCID record. Of course, you can always add works manually, like we shown earlier, or using any of the other options. But to save time, I recommend using the search and link wizard. So click on the search and link wizard. If you click on that, you will see a list appear with various publication databases. Each of these databases is integrated with ORCID so that if you have publications in any of these sources, like PubMed, for example, you can search for them through the database and have them added to your ORCID record without having to retype them all in manually. You may or may not have works in the available databases depending on your discipline, but I'd always encourage you to look through these databases or through this and try connecting with the databases that might contain your works. If you have any works that have been published in journals, or if you know you have works that have DOIs, which stands for Digital Object Identifier, I always recommend using the Crossref metadata search that is indicated here. So all of the search and link wizards basically work the same way. So if you pick, say, Crossref metadata cert, or if you pick DOE OSTI, or the data site, it really works almost similar to each other. So I will show you how this works using Crossref metadata search as an example. You will first be asked to authorize Crossref as a trusted party on your ORCID record, so they can add your work's information to your ORCID record for you. So When you click on that, it will take you to an authorization page, and then you click on Authorize Access. You will be taken, once you give them authorization, you will be taken to a search page where you can search within Crossref to find your publications. So here you can go ahead and search just based on your name. This is basically a screenshot of my colleague Sheila's um, searching for uh, her work in Crossref. So if you know the DOI of your work, you can actually also use that here as well. So I will just start just by searching for the name, and we hit enter to launch the search. A page will appear with search results, and ideally you will be able to find works that belong to you. You can always adjust the search term in the search box at the top. And if you don't see your works initially, you can use the search filters on the left side or sort by relevance or date. Basically, you have that available there to kind of reduce the results or try to find the results that you're looking for. When you do see your work that belongs to you, click Add to ORCID to have it added to your ORCID record. That will be pushed to your ORCID record, so that again, saving you time. So once you add it to your ORCID record or add to ORCID, this should appear in your works section with the source as your name via Crossref metadata search. Or if you're using other search and link wizards, it will be your name and the name of the search and link wizard database that you are connecting with. You can also add works to ORCID by importing a bibtex file, which you can download from various sources such as Google Scholar or Zotero, for example. This is very helpful if you have a lot of publications and you don't have an ORCID record yet, and you're populating your ORCID record. You can change your basically your file to a bibtex file and then upload it to ORCID. So here you can always export all of your ORCID works to a bibtex. So let's take a look. Okay, and then you would choose bibtex file to import. And if you need to get this work to a different system, for example, you can also do that. And then you will go ahead and basically add that works into your ORCID record. And you can also export your works from your ORCID ID or from your ORCID record into a bibtex file as well. So basically, you can upload a bibtex file to add all of your citations, and you can also download a bibtex file from ORCID to say if you want to add it somewhere else to a different system or to just have it in your computer. And there you go, export all works. All right, so now let's take a look at the funding section of ORCID. So how to add funding information to your ORCID record. So here, you will want to add your past funding information to your ORCID record. In the funding section of your ORCID record, when you click on funding, you can see that you can either select search and link, a search and link wizard, or add manually. Start by selecting search and link here. Then when you click on that, it will take you to this page. So click on Dimensions Wizard. So Dimensions Wizard is a funding database that is connected to ORCID. So you can find your funding awards in the database and have them added to your ORCID record for you. So click on Dimensions Wizard and you should be able to get to this page. Again, you're authorizing Dimensions Wizard to access your ORCID record, so that way they can push data to your ORCID record as well. So in here, you will be asked to authorize the same way as we looked at the other search and link wizard. And then if you click on Authorize Access, You will then be taken to a page that allows you to search for any past funding you have received, either searching based on your name or the name of the grant. Once you have done that, then your research, a list of matching grants will appear, and you can select which one or more than one that belongs to you using the check boxes next to each listing, like what we are seeing here. Once you have selected your grants from the list, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page and click Next. And then you want to confirm your selection and click Submit to ORCID. From there, you can go back to your ORCID record and you should see the funding entry with the source indicating that it came from Dimensions Wizard. So here an example with Sheila's name via Dimensions Wizard. If you can't find any past grants in Dimensions Wizard, keep in mind that you can always add them manually. All right, and last but not least, also know that trusted organizations can often add information to your ORCID record for you if they are configured to do that. So keep your eye out again for opportunities to connect your ORCID ID with various organizational systems and platforms that you might be using during your publishing, grant funding, and reporting workflows. Trusted organizations are authorized through the same process that we saw when we connected with Crossref metadata search and the Dimensions wizard earlier. Typically, when interacting with a system, you would be asked to connect your ORCID ID, where you would log into ORCID and click Authorize when asked for permission to connect. Once you have connected your ORCID ID with trusted organizations, those organizations will appear listed in the account settings of your ORCID record. So earlier, if you look at that drop-down menu that says Trusted Parties, you will see the different databases that have ORCID functionalities that you connected with, that are trusted organizations, and you will see a list of the organizations that you've provided permissions to. So example here are like Clarivate, Crossref Metadata Search, Dimensions Wizard. So those are just some of the examples. And if you look at your ORCID record, going through that process, you would be able to see that under trusted parties under your account settings or under your basically under your account settings in your ORCID record. All right, so for trusted organizations, the thing to remember is that basically any organization that has enabled their systems to work with ORCID can ask for your permission to add authoritative information to your ORCID record for you. So you don't have to worry about adding it. Here are a few examples where we can see that an organization has written information to these individuals' ORCID records, where the source of the information is the name of the organization rather than the name of the individual. So an example here with DataCite, Crossref metadata search, and ORCID adding information to somebody's ORCID record. So with this in mind, it's always a good idea to authorize permission anytime an organization asks to connect to your ORCID record. So the information then your ORCID record can essentially be verified by the organizations saving you again time, as well as you don't have to worry as much about keeping your information up to date. So we always encourage you to use your ORCID ID wherever possible. So just again, look for that green ORCID ID button to make those kind of connections. So when you see those green ORCID ID button, that means that you'll be able to use your ORCID ID, your ORCID credentials to log into the system, for example, or they may have capabilities to be able to write information to your ORCID record for you. All right, so that's pretty much the end of our workshop. This is, you'll see here is our contact information or just information about us for the ORCID US community. We are very excited to be working with you. So again, thank you for listening. You can email us at orcidus@lyrasis.org if you have any questions. And all right, and I think we can open it up to question and answers and see what's happening in our chat and if you have any questions.
We do have a few questions in the chat for you, Paolo.
Thank you,
Sheila was
Kayla.
answering a few of them, but one that I didn't see her answer yet was what would you recommend for Crossref for authors with common names? The Crossref faucets are not available as demonstrated in the presentation.
Okay, so looking at, let's say if you're looking at common names, like if you're using the Crossref metadata search and you're claiming something from there. So yeah, that's a very good question. So the thing is, like when you're looking at those, when you're searching for your name at Crossref, um, there will be a bunch of facets that you can look, you can filter it out, but you can also take a look at the title of your work, for example, and making sure that it's the right works that you want to add to your ORCID record. The other thing that you can also do is that if you know what the DOI is of your work, you can actually use the DOI searching for the Crossref metadata in the Crossref metadata search. Another recommendation I would do, and this is probably one of the best ones, is that um, you know that you're going to be writing, you're going to have future publications. We always encourage that you use your ORCID ID when, say, signing into a publication system, for example, or you want to ask your publisher and work with your publisher to see if they could add your ORCID ID in the DOI metadata. So that way, if they're working with Crossref, Crossref will be able to just automatically add that information, that metadata to your ORCID record once it is available once it is published. So that would be a good way to really make sure that it is your works that's being added. I hope that answers your question.
I'm going to chime in here just really
Yes.
quick because I see a lot of people commenting about the Crossref search and link wizard and how people are getting a lot of results and the facet browsing currently unavailable. That is very frustrating because those facets are what helps to really limit the search. I see somebody saying that those have not been available for a long time, so that's really good to know. And we will reach out to Crossref to ask about that because that's really frustrating. Their search is also set up to look for, if you search for a name, your first name or your last name, and that's why you're getting so many results as opposed to it searching for the first and last name together, which would be much better. And we've given them that feedback over time too. So for that one, you know, there's the sort by relevance and publication year. So you could try going over to publication year and seeing if maybe that helps. If you know like the years that you were publishing. Aside from that, the Crossref, if that facet browsing isn't available right now, it may not be the most efficient option. If you know the DOI, like Paolo said earlier, if you know the DOIs for your works, you can search based on those. And there's also an option when you're adding a work to your ORCID record to add by DOI as opposed to going through the search and link. And so that's another option too, if you know the DOI. As far as searching based on ORCID ID, let's check. I believe that is also a possibility, but then your works will only show up if your ORCID ID is included in the DOI metadata. So if it was something that was published before you had an ORCID ID or before ORCID existed, I think ORCID started in 2012. So if it was before that, then searching based on ORCID ID isn't going to work. But yeah, just wanted to say a few things about that because we weren't aware that that facet browsing isn't available. And so we will follow up with Crossref on that and try to get that, see what's going on and get it back up for people.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you everyone for bringing that to our attention. Like Sheila said, we will look a little farther at that one, and we'll have more information. Um, Hopefully, we'll get it before we send the recording to you. So we'll add that information there via email. All right. What other questions do we have, Kayla?
So we did have one from Shane. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Shayna, is it recommended to add other types of documents that don't have a DOI? For example, if we help write amicus illegal briefs, will we include those in the work section?
Thank you, Kayla. I was just actually typing an answer on the chat on that one, but that's a good one to talk about now. But basically, yes, you can add different works in your ORCID record. It doesn't need to have a DOI, of course, but if you have a DOI, that's even better. But you can add works to your ORCID record manually. So, and there are different work types that are available in ORCID. So the different products that you have with your work, for example, you can add that there. And actually, here's a link, and that gives you an idea on the different work types that's available in ORCID. So if, for example, you can add a book review, for example, even a dictionary entry. So all of those things you can add. If your work types is not available in terms of like if you look at all of this list, there's also a section where you can add other types of works in ORCID in your ORCID record. So yeah, I always recommend that you do add pretty much the products that you've created to your ORCID record. All right. Do we have any other questions? Should we go through some of the questions that been asked? Let me just pull up.
I
link.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
think this one was answered. It was a bit of a follow-up to the
Mm-hmm.
Crossref facets one, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was answered, so I'll go ahead and read it out. So Anya was saying, thank you. These are great suggestions for early career researchers who are newly publishing with ORCID and DOIs. However, I would love to hear recommendations for researchers with hundreds of publications prior to DOIs, common names, etc.
Yeah, so if you have previous publications, um, one of the things that I would probably recommend, if you have that, say, in your, if you're using, say, Zotero or um, one of the citation management kind of system in your computer, you may be able to kind of change those files into a BibTeX file, like we mentioned earlier, where you can upload it to ORCID. So you have, let's say, 100 publications previously that you want to add. That's a lot of work to be adding it, especially if you're adding it manually, for example. So you can change that into a BibTeX file and be able to upload that into ORCID. And that should make it easier for you. And that's the same thing. It's say if your publication is available in Google Scholar, for example, if all of your publications are there, you should be able um, to kind of grab those publications metadata or information into a BibTeX file and upload it to ORCID. And Sheila just actually shared a link on how to do that. But of course, the other option is you also have a manual kind of way to enter information in ORCID. It might just take a little bit more time to do that. Sheila, anything to add on that?
Not really. Yeah, the options would be manually entering it, uploading a BibTeX file that you can get from Google Scholar or Zotero, for example, like Paolo already said, looking through the search and link wizard databases that are available there. But as of right now, that's pretty much it. In some cases, an organization may be set up to add works information to your ORCID record for you. Like some universities have repositories or citation databases. So you could check if you're affiliated with an institution to see if something like that is available. Hein Online, for example, if you have any works in Hein Online, you can have those added to your ORCID record. So also NASA ADS. So it kind of depends on like what discipline you're in. There may be some additional options. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I would recommend too, if you do have a lot of works and you have like this really large backlog and you want to get it all into ORCID, but maybe you can't find it through a search and link wizard, or there's no other option than manual. Maybe just treating it like you would like a CV document or a resume, and just periodically going in and doing what you can here and there. Or at least getting the most recent publications in there. That would be my advice.
Thank you, Sheila. Looks like we have a question about a published journal, articles in a published journal, but only preprints are showing up from Crossref. So that's interesting. So were you using for that one, if you could just kind of give us a little bit more information, whether that one you claimed it through the metadata search, Crossref metadata search, or was it directly from Crossref that was adding it directly to your ORCID record? But yeah, if your ORCID ID is in Crossref or is in the metadata, you should have been able to push that information into ORCID if it's coming from Crossref. We can take a look at that a little bit more and see what's going on. Sheila, any idea on that one?
That is strange. If you are publishing in peer-reviewed journals and you're supplying your ORCID ID to the publisher and you've granted that permission to Crossref, they should be writing the actual final published article information to your ORCID record. I would just say if you email us at orcidus@lyrasis.org, I put that in the chat, we can help dig into some of these issues. Like if you're personally having some questions or weird things are happening, just email us and we can look into it and work with you. I also see the question about, is there a way to link a RepHec ID and ORCID ID? Right now, to my knowledge, there is not. We had been in conversation. I know the people that kind of manage RepHec were thinking about doing an ORCID integration there. But to my knowledge, that has not happened yet. But if you have a RepHec ID and you want to connect it to ORCID, I would recommend trying to reach out to the people who kind of administer RepHec and ask about that. But yeah, basically, if you want to connect your ORCID with any system that's out there, any platform that's out there, or any organization that's out there, that organization or that platform has to do the work of integrating ORCID into their system. So we have to kind of let them know that that's something we would like to do as users.
Great, thank you, Sheila. We are about at the top of the hour. Is there any last minute questions? If you have one, if not, you can also email us your questions at orcidus@lyrasis.org. We can take a look at it and see what's available out there. If there are any other questions that we were not able to answer today, we will definitely include them on the information that we will send to you. Again, we will share the recording link once it becomes available, and as well as some notes and the questions and answers from today. All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to working with you again soon.